This morning's Hutchinson City Council meeting, October 2, 2018. Glad to see you all. Linda, would you call roll, please?
Dave Line.
Here.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Here.
Soldner.
Here.
Inskeep.
Here.
Deckant.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gary, good morning.
Good morning. Shall we pray? Yes. Our Father in heaven, I pray that we would be mindful of all the blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We are indeed grateful to live in this community. We're grateful for those who give their time and their energy to serve us in this chamber and in various ways throughout our community. I pray for your blessing to be upon each of them. Keep them safe as they go about keeping us safe. And I pray for this chamber today for wisdom and discernment in the discussions and the decisions that are made that affect the citizens of our fair community. Pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Gary, thank you. All right. We have several proclamations this morning. Let's see here. Our first one is Disability Employment Awareness Month. I think we have a couple of people that want to join me up here, please. Whereas the recognition and protection of civil and human rights for all individuals rests at the core of our existence as a nation, and whereas the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act articulates and ensures the inalienable rights of people with disabilities, and whereas the American Association of People with Disabilities estimates that there are currently 56 million people with disabilities in the United States, and the unemployment rate among people with disabilities is 70%, and whereas efforts such as International Disability Mentoring Day seek to educate potential employees and employers concerning this untapped pool of skilled, talented, productive, and knowledgeable workforce. And whereas knowledge of disability concerns, issues, and rights serve to benefit our society as a whole by providing the foundation upon which understanding begins. And whereas October has been designated as National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Now therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckant, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as Disability Employment Awareness Month here in the City of Hutchinson, and call upon all citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs and activities that affirm our determination to make the promise of equality and civil rights for all a reality. Congratulations to one of you. Both you want to speak? Okay, good, thank you.
First off, we just want to thank the council for helping and everything. You guys helped out a lot with Disability Mentoring Day. Like you said, there's 70% of people with disabilities unemployed, and with this program, it shows children and youth that not only should they work, but they can work. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Manufacturing Month. Morning, Deborah. Are you coming solo?
Yes, I'm a photographer.
Oh, she's the photographer today. Okay, all right. Got to have the photographer. Whereas recognizing Manufacturing Month is an effective way to highlight the importance of manufacturing in our community and draws attention to the many rewarding high-skilled jobs in the industry. And whereas it supports and celebrates our local manufacturers and our school programs that prepare our future workforce. And whereas Manufacturing Month provides communities with opportunities to connect educators and their students with the manufacturing industry and to provide them with a first-look experience of the quality manufacturers in Reno County. And whereas manufacturing is the cornerstone of our economy, and it provides jobs for thousands of citizens in our community, and serves many different industries, including agriculture, advanced manufacturing, renewable energy, food processing, and technology. And whereas Manufacturing Month urges members of the community to join in recognizing the value of our manufacturers and the importance they serve in our county, state, and the nation. Now therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckant, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as Manufacturing Month. Deborah?
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. You're welcome.
We appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
And I just want to say a few words on behalf of the Hutchinson-Reno County Chamber of Commerce and all of our members, those that are manufacturers and those that benefit from manufacturing, and educators in our community too, who are educating the pipeline of students who are going to become the future job fillers in our manufacturers. So we have over 24 manufacturers that are Hutch Chamber members. Actually, if you look on the website, there are 26 to be exact, and over 3,000 manufacturing jobs in our community. So just over 8% of all of the employment in Hutchinson comes directly from manufacturing. But sometimes we don't take time to celebrate that enough. And so we appreciate you taking the time to sign this proclamation and celebrate those investments that the manufacturers are making. Many times it's going on behind the scenes without us even knowing. So in the last year, companies like Siemens Gamesa have retooled to build new Gamesa product lines right here in Hutchinson. Collins Bus is getting ready to retool to build a great new product line for New York City Transit. Companies like Kuhn Krause have added new robotic welding cells that are advanced manufacturing. Just you name it, there are investments happening behind the scenes all over the community, even in machining companies like Riley Machine Works, one of our newest chamber members last year that said, I'm a manufacturer and I want to be part of this movement to grow manufacturing jobs in Hutchinson. But one of the most important things that we need to celebrate too are the assets that the community has invested in, like the Hutchinson Career and Technical Education Academy, and the work that USD 308 and many of our surrounding school districts are doing to grow that pipeline. So one of the things I wanted to point out that we are coordinating this month on behalf of a request that came from our manufacturers actually is to help bridge that gap between education and industry. And we're starting that on October 15th. We're kicking it off with an opportunity to bring 51 school teachers from a local school district into the doors of our manufacturers, because really those educators are the front line. They're training our kids every day, and if the teachers don't know what the opportunities are in our community, how will those children know? And so 51 teachers are going to be visiting 3 companies that day. They're going to Collins Bus, and then they'll be at Kuhn Krause, and then at Superior Boiler. And we think it's really important that we bring the educators together with industry. This is just the first step. But National Manufacturing Day is really a movement that was created at the national level. It's actually celebrated on October 5th, but we're going to celebrate it all month long. And we're just going to keep this going and doing more to bridge that gap between education, industry, and our community, and celebrate the great things we have here in Hutch. So thanks for helping us do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, you're mentioning the bringing the educators in. I remember several years ago, Vice Mayor and myself, was through the Quest Center, had an opportunity to tour Superior, as I recall that day, and also Collins, and it is really an eye-opener to see the operations, even in that very cursory level, compared to reading or hearing about them. So, excellent. Okay, Chief Beer, and I think there's probably a couple more folks, or are they coming up and you're going to let them take care of it? Soup? I'm the photographer. You're the photographer. All right. That's awesome. Good morning. Morning. Whereas the City of Hutchinson is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Hutchinson. Excuse me. And whereas U.S. home fires resulted in 2,950 civilian deaths in 2016, representing the majority, that is 87%, of all U.S. fire deaths, and caused $7.9 billion in property damage. And whereas many of today's products and furnishings produce toxic gases and smoke when burned, making it impossible to see and breathe within moments, and these conditions contribute to a much smaller window of time for people to escape a home fire safely, with people having as little as 1 to 2 minutes to escape from the time the smoke alarm sounds. And whereas a home fire escape plan provides the skill set and know-how to quickly and safely escape a home fire situation. A home fire escape plan includes 2 exits from every room in the home, a path to the outside from each exit, smoke alarms in all required locations, and a meeting place outside where everyone in the home will meet upon exiting. And whereas Hutchinson's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2018 Fire Prevention Week theme, Look, Listen, Learn, effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of look for places a fire could start, listen for the sound of the smoke alarm, and following your home escape plan, and learn 2 ways out of every room, and make sure all doors and windows leading outside open easily and free of clutter. Now therefore, I, Stephen A. Decant, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, do hereby proclaim October 7 to 13 of 2018 as Fire Prevention Week. Throughout this community, I urge all the people of Hutchinson to find and develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practice it twice a year, and to participate in the many public safety activities and efforts of Hutchinson's fire and emergency services during Fire Prevention Week 2018. Gentlemen, congratulations and thank you for the service that you provide. Wonder both of you, oh, you're the holder, you will not hold.
Mayor, Council, thank you. On behalf of the Hutchinson Fire Department, we appreciate you acknowledging next week as Fire Prevention Week. It's a big week for the fire service. Although it's just 1 week, Fire Prevention Week, we do it year-round. And as far as myself and my partner Tony, it's within our job title, Fire Prevention Inspector. So we do it every day, not only to prevent fire, but to prevent the loss of life from those fires. And that's everything that we do, from our safety talks, education at senior centers. Next week primarily focuses on the schools. We'll be in every elementary school within our district, talking to the kids. I don't know if you heard, but that came into play yesterday. Getting the kids out of that school, to the extinguisher classes that we put on for various companies, businesses around town. And yes, to the code that we educate and enforce. But our job is to prevent the fires and injuries and loss of life. So thank you very much from the fire department for your recognition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chief, thank you. Okay, next item.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
Okay, this is that time of the meeting where we offer the opportunity for members in the audience to address the council on matters or issues not already on the agenda. We do ask that you identify yourself by name and address and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, please.
Good
Morning,
morning. I'm Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. This morning I just want to take a few minutes and recognize the zoo and the zoo staff. Last week, they were awarded accreditation through AZA, it's the
Fantastic.
Association of Zoos and
Pretty good.
Aquariums. It's really the highest standard that a zoo can accomplish. They put a lot of effort into it over the last several months, really. It's been a long year. It's been a long process. So I just wanted to brag on them a little bit. It really sets our zoo apart from other zoos. It shows that we're really doing the right things and that we're really a jewel for the community. So I do want to invite Ryan to the mic to talk a little bit about the process and what it all means.
Great.
Well, Ryan, congratulations.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Impressive.
Good morning. Ryan Van Zant, Hutchinson Zoo. As Justin just said, the AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, is the gold standard of zoo accreditation basically in the world. For us to have that accreditation again, which we've had for 20 years now, which is also impressive. Getting every year this accreditation goes through. It's a pretty good application that we have to fill out, followed by a 3-day inspection from zoo professionals selected. They came from all across the country. We had one from South Dakota, one from Texas, and one from the Los Angeles Zoo. So we obviously had a lot in common with her.
Right.
But they were great. As Justin also kind of alluded to, that this is kind of a special thing because it's not just everybody goes out and gets accredited. Of 2,800 licensed animal facilities by the USDA where the public can come and view animals, only 10% are accredited by the AZA in the United States. And just because you apply and you pay your fees doesn't mean you're getting accredited either. So there was plenty of zoos that went home disappointed this year. But we're not one of those. When they came for the inspection, they're looking at things like animal welfare at the zoo, our veterinarian programs, our educational offerings, our conservation efforts, our staff training, our guest services. They even wanted to know how many parking spaces we had in our lot. So they're very, very thorough. We have plenty, by the way. At the end of that week, they gave us a basic rundown of their findings, which went really well. It was actually one of the best reports we've had. One of the inspectors actually pulled me aside at the end and whispered in my ear, any zoo in the United States would kill to have this inspection report. So we're really proud of that. We've done we've been working really hard, as I think you've seen and the public has seen when they've come through the zoo. We've got a lot of new things happening there. The inspectors are very, very complimentary of the zoo improvements, also of our staff. They could tell our staff was working really well together and very dedicated to the zoo. There are areas that they suggested that we improve or we're looking for improvements were things that we had already identified internally and are already on our list and are very doable things that we're already working towards. So that makes you feel good as well when you know that you're on the right track without anybody having to tell you that. Other big things that they were very impressed with was something that you're going to hear about shortly today a little bit more, and that's the plans for our education building at the zoo. It's something that was noted at our last inspection 5 years ago that was needed to really take that to the next level, along with hiring a full-time educator, which we did several years ago. And they were very complimentary of the commitment it shows from the city of Hutchinson and the public that comes to see our zoo. So we have a lot of work to do, of course. We're working every day, but it's looking really good out there. If you haven't been out to the zoo in a while, you should come check it out. Our little shark's grown quite a bit. Looks a lot more like a shark now. We've also got caimans, which are a pretty new exhibit. They're like a little alligator that many people haven't seen. Our whole biomes building, habitat building has been completely renovated, so that's pretty neat to check out. Lots of fun things for little kids. New playgrounds, new sidewalks going in. Lots of big stuff for the future. So I encourage you to come out, and thank you for supporting us. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan.
Congratulations.
Excellent work.
Yeah. I didn't answer all your questions.
Well, I think you did answer what I was going to ask. So the inspection for recertification is a 5-year cycle?
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to comment. In my professional occupation previously, we went through accreditation. It is an arduous process. And so I understand. And again, just want to congratulate you in achieving that. Now, how long has the Hutch Zoo been accredited?
For 20 years.
For 20
This
years.
is-
Yeah.
This
So
has
this
been
is
our
about the
fifth inspection.
inspection.
Yep.
Great, great. Well,
Mhm.
very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Very good.
Heather?
All right.
Anyone else? Seeing none, next item, please.
Item 6, consent agenda.
I'd-
Oh,
What,
go ahead.
I'd like to just ask a couple of questions
Sure.
about, on the finance, let's see, the financial reports.
Appropriation ordinance.
Angela, I had mentioned something to the city manager, just in terms of the summaries on revenue and expenses. And we were roughly through 2/3 of the year, and I noticed one of them seemed to be a lot higher than that. I think that was on the revenue end. I kind of assumed it probably had to do with property taxes, but there might be some other things. And then on the other side of things, on the expense end, it was a good deal lower year to date. And so just wondering, give a little explanation if you could, please.
Angela Richard, Director of Finance. What it was an error on the formula for the revenues. We have not collected 82% of our actual to budget revenues so far. We've collected 57%, which does look lower if you compare it to last year. Last year we had collected 69%. But on the expense side, it's 47%. Last year was 54%. Those numbers are really hard to compare year to year because, for example, in 18 we had budgeted a $15 million FEMA project in our CIP fund, which we have not done. So we have not collected the revenue or spent the expenses. So there are things like that that throw it off. I think for the majority of the funds, we are where we should be, both revenues and expenses.
Okay.
That's the important thing.
All right, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Jade, I think you were
Yeah.
ready to make a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been a motion in 2 seconds to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckert?
Yes.
Item 7A, consider resolution amending building permit fees.
Good morning, Council. Trent Maxwell, building official. I'm here a little bit about building permit fees. As you know, the budget was adopted. Within the budget for 2019 was increasing these fees by 10%, and that has to be approved by a resolution. So I bring this resolution to you for approval. I recommend the increase of 10%, and I think in your handout you have a fee schedule showing you what those fees look like on the increase.
So across the board, Trent, in the part of our packet that has the fees, those are the new fees and those reflect the 10%.
Correct.
Whether they're building fees or inspection fees, whatever.
If the fees were constant to last year, as an example, or this year, what likely additional revenue will that generate us?
We had estimated in the budget that would be about $45,000.
About 45,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
For next year.
Yeah, for next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, assuming everything's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. So, okay.
Trent, could you give a couple of examples? I'm looking at the building permit fees. Maybe kind of at the bottom, middle, and upper end, what sort of difference? And I hope maybe had some chance, and I'm not catching you off guard. This year's fee is versus what next year's for the similar project?
Yeah, I didn't bring the old fee schedule with me,
Okay.
but on the easier way, just because I haven't memorized, your 0 to 500 is $19.80. 2180 is the new fee on top of that. If you take it and you take away the 10%, that would give you what that amount is. On our average home, it's about $180,000.
Okay.
Is what the valuation of that home is.
just quick example
Did you have some-
of our old fee, under the last year fee for $200,000 house was $1,273. The new fee would be $1,400, so $127 increase for a $200,000 house building permit. And we provided during the budget comparison to surrounding communities, and you know, most of the communities have a plan review in addition to their building permit fee. And so with these new fees, you know, Hutchinson at $200,000, we're at $1,400, Salina $1,800, Wichita $2,700, and Lawrence $1,800. So we're still well under some of those cities. We've got a few other comparisons too, but a lot of them have a building permit fee, and then, for example, Lawrence is 20% of that for plan review. Wichita's got a $1,700 building permit, but 60% plan review. So it's pretty extensive, and we have no additional cost for plan review.
So in those others that you mentioned that have the plan review fee, is that 20% or that 16% above and beyond than the?
I included that in the
You
numbers I
included
gave
that,
you.
so of,
right.
of what you mentioned.
Yeah, just so it's
Okay,
comparable. You're right.
When was our last increase?
2009.
2009, almost 10 years, yeah. Right.
Yeah, I did some quick math as well. Just a $10,000 roof, the permit fee for that would be $163.80. Not a huge part of the expenditure for that window, $2,000 to $25,000 projects.
And that's the total cost, not just not the increase alone. But the,
Correct. Yeah, I didn't have it to compare
Yeah.
against the other, but yeah, I just kind of want to see if it was going to be a large portion of a mid-sized project or not. I didn't feel that overwhelming.
Anything else, Trent?
That's it.
Other questions?
I would move to approve resolution rescinding resolution number 2008R-23 and establishing permit fees as authorized in section 21-201 of chapter 21 building regulations of the Hutchinson City Code form, and after January 1, 2019, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Been a motion is second. Is there any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Kairos de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent.
Yes.
Item 8A, consider zoo education building bid results.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. This item is bid results for the zoo education building. First, I want to talk just briefly about the building itself. The location of the building. Sorry, I can't do two things at once. Here we go. The location of the building will be kind of towards the parking lot. So you can see in this aerial photograph, here's the parking lot. This is the existing visitor center, so kind of the main entrance. So the building's going to sit here in between the visitor center and the wild care center, the rehab center. There will be sidewalk connections to the trail / sidewalks, so school groups, those sort of things. They can access directly from the parking lot to the building. There'll be another connection here to the main sidewalk. Currently, the perimeter fence is kind of in this zone here, so the building actually will act as part of the perimeter fence, so it'll be very visible as you walk into the zoo. You'll see this new building, very prominent building. So this is just a little bit closer up image of the building footprint as well as the patio. I'll talk a little bit about that patio here in just a minute, but the building really is designed to be flexible so we can have some indoor-outdoor space to really expand the footprint of the building. So this is just the interior layout of the building. Building's roughly 2,100 square feet. A little over half of the building is one large classroom. So that's this space here. So this is an overhead door we're seeing here, as well as two doors. And then that patio I kind of outlined earlier would be off to this direction. Again, that really allows the building to open up. On nice days, we can have groups kind of come and go, or we can expand the footprint of the building using the patio space. The remainder of the building is pretty utilitarian. We have two restrooms, a small office. This area here will hold items, education items, biofacts, things that are maybe sensitive, furs and skins and that kind of stuff. So, so this room will be a good spot to store some of our more fragile education equipment. This space here then is the holding room. for all of our education animals. Because these animals do go off-site, they basically have to live in quarantine all the time. They can't be mixed with our general population because of the opportunity to introduce disease into our general population. So this room here will house all of our education animals. It gives us direct access out of this door to the parking lot, so those animals, so our staff, whether it's volunteer or paid staff, can take those animals to schools or parks or wherever those animals go for education. And then this is just a utility room. So really not a lot of bells and whistles in this building. We did have kind of a high roof line or ceiling inside the education room just to make it feel a little bit better. But the rest of the building is really pretty basic. Just to give you an idea of the size, we really modeled this after home builders. Ryan Van Zant looked at home builders and thought that was about the right size. So if you've been to home builders recently, this is basically the exact same size as home builders. So this is what the building will look like from the exterior. Again, pretty basic building. We did add one kind of nice touch to it. That's this this overhang here that we're going to do exposed cedar beams. We did that just to tie it into the architecture of some of the other existing buildings, the log cabin, and some of the other rustic looking buildings. But again, nothing real fancy. We do have an overhead door here, so this is the back side of the building that we talked about that kind of allows that space to open up. I want 2 slides. So on September 11th, we received bids for this building. Low bid was from Hebe and Associates from Hutch. Their base bid was $370,000. Our budget for the project was $300,000. So we're going to have to look at taking some of these deduct items. So I'll run through them real quick. Deduct item number 1, or item number 2, deduct item number 1 was for all above ground plumbing. Deduct item number 2 was for HVAC, and the third one was for electrical. Add alternate number 5, so item number 5 is for upgrading those exterior, the overhead door. In the base bid, it was just basically an aluminum garage door. This add alternate puts the glass panels into it, so it really acts more as a window when it's closed. And then item number 6 was to convert from solid wood doors to metal doors, and then item number 7 was for the casework. There's just a small kitchenette's not even the right word, some cabinets in the main education room. And so as an add to add those. The base bid does include the basic plumbing for those, for that sink and everything. So it is my recommendation to proceed with Hebe and Associates. And in that recommendation, I would recommend that we accept deduct items number 2, 3, and 4. So again, that's the above ground plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. So we'll have to do all of those items with in-house staff. It's the same model we took with the Hobart Debtor locker room building, which I think went very well. Able to bring that project down to be within budget. Would also recommend that we take the add alternate item number 5 to do the upgrade in the overhead door. I think it just will really add a lot to the building. That would bring the total contracted amount to $268,900. The remaining $31,100 would be used then for our expenses as far as purchasing HVAC equipment, plumbing, fixtures, and those sorts of things. So.
And that would be sufficient.
It will be, yeah. It'll be really tight. It'll be close. From an HVAC standpoint, the building's a little bit challenging because it has to have 2 completely separate systems. The animal holding has to be on its own system. You obviously don't want those smells coming into the education room. It's also better for the animals. So, but that'll be we'll be really close on that. Yeah. So. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Could you, the perimeter fence, so the building will become part of the perimeter. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. Yep. So the existing fence, you could just kind of see it outlined in this drawing here. It comes here, and then it kind of angles back, and then it comes back to here. So the building then, so from this corner of the building to this corner of the building, the fence will dead end into the building. So
Okay.
as you walk up to it, you know, you're not seeing the wood fence anymore. You're seeing the front of this building. So the view you will see is kind of this middle image here. So you don't see the fences here, but you know the fence then will attach here and here. So you'll see this, the entryway, a couple windows, and then this is a door to the utility room. So the image below then is the back side of the
backside.
building. Yeah, they would face the zoo itself.
What's the construction schedule? Completion?
We're hoping to have footings and foundations done yet this year, so we can get out of the ground before the temperatures get too low. That would allow them to work through the winter months to enclose the building. So, you know, I'm hoping by next summer, early summer, that we can have this building up and operational. So, and I have talked to Hebe and Associates about using our staff for those 3 items, for those 3 trades, and did inform them that we probably don't work as quickly as a contractor would. You know, we've got other responsibilities, and they were fine with that. You know, we do not have liquidated damages on this. I did that intentionally, knowing that if we were involved, that we may slow the process down a little bit. So Hebe and Associates were happy with that. They were fine. So.
With regards to the budgeted amount, the $300,000, was that inclusive of the 2, 3, and 4 deducts? I'm not sure if I'm phrasing that correctly. When I assume it was the engineer's estimate said we could do this for $300,000, that would have included 2, 3, and 4.
Yep. Yeah, this is another case of you know, where the architect was off.
Well, you see where I'm going with that.
I do. You know, and I think it's just something locally with the construction industry right now. Either business is really good, so they can. I know steel prices have gone up, but there's really no steel in this building, so that doesn't explain that. You know, these numbers were based off the Hobart Debtor square foot numbers. You know, building has similar finishes in their size. So in the bids were very competitive. Hebe's actually quite a bit low. And he told me the reason why he had a pretty good discount on the earthwork. He thinks his subcontractor, who's a local contractor, had a good opening. This building fit in perfectly, so he got a good price on the earthwork. So that's, according to him, what set him apart from some of the others.
Well, and you're right. A lot of times it is, because so many of these guys use a lot of the same subs, but then if you have that one sub that stands out, it might do it. But I was just curious again. Because I 70,000 over the mark or whatever it was.
No. Yep. And with our past experience, the last few buildings, you know, I was very hopeful I could do this turnkey and not have to take these deducts, but it still makes me nervous with our last few bids, even with, you know, the architect's estimate. Is why we added all these deducts and add items so we can get the project done on or under budget.
On or under. Okay.
On budget.
Justin, how does that affect the rest of the work that I assume that these people would be doing, the city crews would be doing, if we didn't have this project?
You know, it does impact it some. But we do prioritize our work. So the crews that are primarily working on this will be our trades folks. So it's our HVAC, our electrician, and our plumber. And so we do, if we have an emergency, you know, at City Hall, if you know, toilets aren't flushing or whatever, we will pull them off the project. You know, we do a pretty good job of preventative maintenance on our trades, so it's not like we're falling way behind on those. So, you know, we're not pulling off our general construction crew for the most part. So our park operations is kind of divided into what I would consider kind of 2 subgroups. So it's our construction side. So those are our guys that do, you know, like concrete and do building repairs and those sorts of things. And then we have kind of our trades folks. So because our construction crew will still be free, they won't be as heavily involved with this, we'll still be able to kind of proceed with other projects. So.
Great.
Other questions?
Nope.
Anything else, Justin?
No.
Nope. Okay. Is there a motion? I will move to approve a contract with Hebe and Associates for the construction of a zoo education building in an amount not to exceed $268,900 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the contract with Hebe and Associates. Any further discussion? Linda, would you call roll, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item.
Item 8B, consider law enforcement center remodel.
Mayor and Council, in your packet, I provided a detailed background of kind of where this project has been when we got it off the ground. You recall back in early 2017 is when we really kind of started the conversation on this. We contracted with Landmark last summer to provide some conceptual designs and budget estimates, and that was presented to the council in December of 2017 in a study session. We then included in 2019 budget funding for this budget at the budgeted amount of just over $2 million. I lost my number, $2,495,000. And so today, what you're being asked to do is approve the architectural and engineering agreement with Landmark for renovation of LEC. This is all the architectural work and engineering work needed to put this project out for bid. Recall we hired Landmark in last year through a competitive process. We requested proposals for the concept and budget estimate number. And then through this phase 2, we're basically looking to contract with Landmark. They're familiar with the project, the work that's done. And typically that's what we've done in the past when we look at a multi-phase project is your selection of your architect engineer is usually in that first phase. And things go well, then you continue on with the negotiated contract from there. So so really today we're here to get approval to proceed with the design of that project to get it ready for bid. I think the council's had the opportunity to tour that facility over the past year, kind of where we're at. In the packet, I talk a little bit about our relationship with the county. Of course, you know, there's questions. The city does not own this building, but we will be basically taking over that entire space that police and sheriff share now. The police or the sheriff department will be moving out. And so we'll enter into some additional discussions with the county to renew that current lease agreement because obviously the square footage usage changes, and we'll want to make sure it's a little more long-term protected, that, you know, we're investing this amount of money. We don't want a letter saying we want you guys to move out a year from now. And so we'll have protection in that lease agreement with that. Anyway, at this point, I would just be happy to address any questions. Troy, Captain Hoover is here if you got any questions, and also from Landmark, Sarah Sipe, who is our contact working with Landmark on this project. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that you might have.
I'd have a question of Sarah, if I can. We're dealing with the 40-year-old building, a lot of unknowns, and I'm just wondering if you are comfortable with building in enough of a contingency to make sure that we are covered throughout this whole project because of the unknowns of the building itself.
I feel like in the law enforcement portion of the building that we're renovating, we've got a 10% contingency. I feel like that's good for that portion. We also have included in this renovating in the lobby and then creating a hall, a wall across the hall to separate court functions from police department. And that we've included a 20% contingency because I feel like that is an area where we may run into more of some unknowns as we build a restroom there in the lobby and run into some of that we just are a little bit more unsure about. But on the law enforcement side, we have good drawings. I say that. When we did the court renovation, there was some cross bridging that no one had any record of. Right. But that was in the exterior walls. So I think we're going to be good with that.
You're
10%
comfortable with that?
contingency.
Okay. I noticed in your scope of work project, you mentioned that it does not include furnishings, which I get that, but asbestos abatement. What might we uncover in terms of the asbestos abatement and probable costs there?
Yeah, and the building is old enough that you may run into some of that, and that's just again, one of those unknowns. And I don't know if in that 2.4 million, any of that was included. I know that furnishings probably is included because we did have a budget estimate for that.
The FF&E,
As far as the
is in there.
environmental side of things, I mean, we don't have a specific line item for that, but, I mean, what would it more likely be floor tile?
Right.
I mean, that's really
Floor
probably
tile?
the area that we'd be concerned about. I don't know about piping, and we're not
Yeah.
really messing with a whole lot of that, but, so.
So if we set this bond project not to exceed a budget of $2,495,000, are we going to be sufficiently covered with that, or are we going to have to modify that number?
I don't know. I mean, you've heard other bids come in and we're way
Yeah.
over budget, so, it's a little bit of the unknown. We haven't issued bonds yet for this, and so as
Right.
we get further into the bidding process, we'll know a little bit more about, what the environment is. And, construction bids may come in 20% high. And then we've got to look at, again, what we just talked about with the zoo
with
building, what
the zoo.
we've got to cut out or what we're not going to be able to do. So, and, this is a little trickier than just building a building from
Right.
the
Yeah.
ground up. I mean, it's a reno, and those get very complicated very fast.
So how do we work through the timing of the issuance of these bonds itself in terms of not experiencing what we did with the Orchard Park project or the zoo project?
Well, I'm not sure what our timetable will be on the bond issue. We typically, because we'll be through design into next year.
Into next year.
Yeah, so probably this spring, once we bid the project, we'll start because we'll have other bonding projects as well to
Right.
do, probably do that at the same time. So hopefully we'll have a better idea because, again, it's not a good thing to issue bonds and then not do a project.
Right.
And so we want to avoid that if at all possible. So.
I think we're committed to doing something for our officers. I mean,
Sure.
it's got to be done, but I appreciate that concern as well. I'm wondering if it being a larger project, even though it is more challenging, if we might garner some interest from a wider swath of companies. I mean, we may get more bids. We may get different
Yeah,
bids.
a lot of it just depends, and Sarah knows the market, kind of what's going on out
Yeah.
there, and this is, I don't know, probably less attractive to contractors because it is a renovation.
Somewhat so,
Yeah.
although it is all interior work, which
Yeah.
sometimes is more attractive.
Okay.
And it really just depends on the bidding climate and what they have in their schedules, and if they can work something like that in.
Right.
It's all interior remodel, that's sometimes quite attractive, so.
So on the bonding piece, Angela, I might ask this of you in terms of if the bonds were issued in 2019 or 20, do we have a balance of what's coming off and that this would come back on, or how does that look?
Yeah, we had budgeted it to be bonded in 2019.
19?
And when we had budgeted that, we had looked at the total amount that we projected to bond that year and what would be coming off. We do try to balance that
Right.
when we budget it. I can't tell you offhand
So you don't see a
what's
big
scheduled
swing?
to come off, but normally we have been paying down about what we bond every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keeping it level.
For the most part, I think these special projects come about that, I mean, it's obviously going to have an impact on our bond and interest
Our
levy.
bond and
And
interest.
We'll deal with that in probably 220.
In 20?
Yeah.
Do you think you'll have the lease worked out prior to our actually bonding?
Yes, that's
project?
something, we've already had those conversations, city attorney, with
Well, I mean,
with
I
the
don't
county.
want to spend the money on
No.
bonding something and then
No.
have the county go, oops.
No.
You know.
And I visited with the county administrator last week about this, that we're moving forward,
Okay.
and everybody's, I think, on the same page. The county is in the process of renovating the basement where the sheriff's department will move of the courthouse into probably towards the end of this year. So timing's going to work out pretty good as far as that space being available, and then logistically, it'll be a difficult project to relocate, employees in LEC to a different part of the building while construction's going on, and so there's a lot of moving parts there that we've yet to figure out. But hopefully we can work in the basement, get that done, move some people down there while we're doing upstairs, but there'll be a lot of conversation about that, so.
Is this
So
one
with
of
our
the
good friends at the county, who own the building, of the 2.495 million, how much of this will the county be agreeing to pay for?
I don't think anything, John.
The answer at this point is zero.
Yeah, so I was wondering if this was one of the items we were going to discuss in our joint session with the county later this month.
It is their building.
Well, you know, the response you're gonna get is that it's 100% occupied by the city. And so therefore, why
They're
would?
the-
Well, I mean, not necessarily that. I mean, we know they're not going
Right,
to.
yeah.
But the lease.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
are we going to discuss any of that?
Yeah, we
that
can.
meeting?
I mean, I think those are gonna be fairly, say, simple, but I think, you know, we've had this agreement for probably since 1972, whenever that building was built. And it's been a pretty simple agreement based on percentage of square footage that we take, utilities. It's renewed annually. Never been an issue, but as we go forward with this major project, we'll want to really kind of tighten that down a little bit to ensure that we've got, you know, access there for a longer period. And I think everybody's on the same page on
Yeah.
this, but to answer your question, I don't see
I know
any-
the answer,
no.
but I just
You just had to say it.
And
Yeah.
let it be part of the record.
Yeah. I know it's something that we've all experienced frustration about, but ultimately, because we've gone back and forth, do we want to build somewhere else? I think the public wants to see more collaboration and less, and this is like an perfect example of how we can do that instead of doing our own thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it work. Are we going to have the opportunity when putting it out to bid to have alternates like Justin did with the other buildings? I think it'd be more difficult in a project like this, but I think we're going to need to start looking at that because who knows what these bids are going to come in at.
I think once, Sarah, maybe as you get deeper into design, there may be a couple things like that you can say,
I
hey.
think there will be some things that will present themselves as opportunities for alternates. I mean,
Yeah, and so that's a good question, and we'll look at that.
determine what those are. but
Well, I just want to
finishes-
appreciate Landmark for their willingness to revise, and come up with different options for us, because I know we were had some pretty strong comments and suggestions about what needed to happen in that building. So appreciate you going back and giving us some other ideas.
I would comment again on the cost share that there probably is an opportunity there when we're looking at the 9/11 communications part of this project, because that is a joint operation between the city and county and other entities, and so we haven't had those formal discussions. But to me, that's a shared space, and therefore that cost of that, we'll figure that. And we've mentioned that in passing, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is an area that I think should be considered part of the cost share.
Well, and I think realistic, I mean, these numbers were put together a year ago.
Right.
And I think we have to be honest in accepting the fact that they may be higher when you actually finish the design function, so.
They may, and we also may be in a different bidding climate by then
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know,
So you
it's
just
don't
know.
predicting the future, and we just can't do it.
But
Have we limited ourselves to the 2.4? Is that kind of
No.
our projection and
no, I don't, I mean, I think that's
so
what
we've not limited ourselves to that at this point.
Not until we
actually get the
bond.
numbers.
Right, there's
Right.
no not
But-
to exceed or
yeah.
anything.
And you
Yeah.
you were saying, John, that we'd be looking at bonding next spring?
Yeah, probably, or
Spring into
early
the
summer.
summer,
It kind of
maybe.
depends on, you know,
Depends on
when
how fast
design's
they draw
finished.
the-
and-
We'll have, I mean, you'll have done your work and we'll have
Right.
Right.
determined.
Right, this was based on preliminary plans that were put
Okay.
together a year ago, so
Mhm.
Yeah.
now we'll go back, of course, with approval and sit down with new police chief and get new ideas or input on ideas, and not change anything too drastically, I'm sure, but get a more refined design and go
Right.
from there.
Did this take into consideration the security issues that we kept butting up against?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that was, Sarah referred to that extra wall.
That's
Yeah.
the wall
Yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
very fine.
Determined to put in a sliding glass wall that just separates court function from police, and then provide a unisex restroom that on the
Right.
police side
Mhm.
to solve
Perfect.
that issue.
Sarah, you mentioned
Thank
that this project will be primarily interior. Will there be some exterior?
There will. We're replacing windows.
Okay.
We're gonna look at the roof, So yes, there will be some exterior work, but the bulk of it is.
Would it be similar in terms of what was done here on the city offices, do you think? Or?
Really, all we've talked about on.
Which has really been a great improvement
Right,
here.
yeah, we haven't talked about changing the look of the building at all, other than to clean up what's happening. You know, there's some staining on the exterior.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
type of thing, so.
And that's something we do want to talk about, because here, you know, we had that, we basically covered it.
Covered it,
with a
yeah.
More modern look, and that's something that we want to kind of talk about, let alone just
And
clean off
those-
the mold or whatever's on
I'd
there.
say those things are all on the table. It's just a matter of
Okay.
Yeah.
how they come in.
Give it a fresher, modern look. Hopefully we
Yeah,
can do something there.
exactly.
And we're not beholden to any historic guidelines on that side of the building?
No.
Okay.
It's totally separate,
Yeah,
except in the heating and air conditioning system.
right.
Well, this will give you your full attention, won't it, this project?
Well, it'll get my attention.
Yeah.
It's not my only project.
It's not your
I'm
only
gonna
okay.
Pull your
All
leg
right.
on that one. But.
All right.
Anything else, Sarah?
So again, the only thing we're committing to today is just the
Design.
$187,000 design, and obviously a lot of decisions to come going down the road.
Well, I move we approve the architectural and engineering agreement with Landmark Architects for the renovation of the Law Enforcement Center for Hutchinson Police Department use at a cost of $187,250 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
And a second. Councilmember Dave Line referred to it. How do I want to say it? 187,000 isn't the 14 that we did for a preliminary work. And it's certainly significant. We need to be sure in our minds that this is where we're wanting to go, and in 6 months from now or a year from now, whether it's either before or after bonding, that we're not going to have some second thoughts about renovating a 40-year-old building that we don't own. I think, for myself, I think it is the way to go. It's probably a quarter of the cost that a newly constructed building would cost us, maybe even less of a percentage. But so it's certainly a much more financially feasible. But again, hearkening to some discussion we had a couple weeks ago and some more discussion we may have today related to Orchard Park. Let's be sure that we are committed, since we're going to be authorizing a nearly $200,000 expenditure today.
I would also mention that I think the community as a whole is already disappointed in the underutilization that's taking place at the courthouse. So we don't need to contribute to that further.
Good point.
I think this is what the public wants. I mean, wouldn't we all like a brand new building? But let's have some adaptive reuse of what we already have.
And I would hope that we end up, and I hope that the police department ends up with a set of space that is a good space to work in and is functional and efficient and whatnot. But
It has a sufficient lifespan.
yeah.
As much as we milked the other one from 70-something till now or whatever. I don't know if we can get that much life out of it, but out of the remodel. But
It's older than us, Dave.
that's it, I'm telling you.
Well, when you
Gosh, it's old, isn't it?
It's really old.
Jeez, it's old.
when we toured the law enforcement center a year ago, I was just absolutely appalled of the working conditions that HPD works under. That we as a community need to improve that work environment for the highest efficiency of our police officers there. And so this is long overdue. And,
It is.
Certainly needed by our police department.
I don't want to speak for Captain Hoover, but I think he would agree that it's also nice to be able to open that space to the public, rather than have to be buzzed in and allowed upstairs.
Yes.
And to walk in, walk upstairs, and be accessible to your local police is a nice feature.
You're right. There's a customer service
Because there's
piece.
not, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
always the bad guys. It's
You're
a lot
not
of
wrong.
times just paying a ticket, and
Yeah.
so it's nice to have that just open.
So I guess I didn't realize. So there won't be a buzzing in method of getting in. Of course, we'll be able to enter there at the law enforcement center rather than a half block away at the courthouse. But folks will be able to walk up to a
Window.
manned desk or a great,
Yep.
fantastic.
Yep.
That is good. I didn't realize that was one of the features.
Right.
I mean, there'll be security beyond that. We're
Right.
Sure.
back in the some of the offices, but yeah.
Good, good. Yes, that is a good customer friendly approach.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Linda, call roll, please.
Dave White?
Yes.
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Next item.
Item 8C, update on the Orchard Park Pavilion.
Good morning. I'm Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. If you'll recall, back in August, I believe it was the second meeting in August, I brought to you the bid results for the Orchard Park Pavilion building. Bids were significantly over budget. We decided at that point to reject all bids. Then I committed to, within 60 days, bringing back common updates. There were several questions that came out of that meeting about some of the usage of our other buildings, as well as that initial master plan, some of those survey results from that initial master plan. So first, I know this is hard to read here. I want to talk about the last 2 years. So these are all the rentals of Rice Park Community Building, Home Builders, as well as the large gazebo and Cary Park. So as you can see, I do have a summary on the next slide, so a little bit easier to read. So in 2016, we had 440 total rentals. There's a gross and a net. I did have a question about the two columns. One's a gross and one's a net after the deposits returned. So in 2016, we netted $17,904. In 2017, then, so the following year, the total rentals grew to 478 total rentals, and then our net revenue also increased to 18,449. So that is just on the total rentals, that's a 9% increase from 16 to 17. In 2018, as of August 31st, we've already have either had 300 rentals that have either taken place or have already been paid for through the remainder of the year. So it really does put us on pace to at least match or not, if not exceed, our 2017 rentals. I said earlier that's a 9% increase. If you take Cary Park gazebo out of the equation and you just look at our enclosed buildings, it's really a 17% increase from 16 to 17. So the reason I wanted to point this out is when there were some questions about how often did our buildings get used. I think this shows that they get used a lot. They are very valued by this community. Close to 500 times a year those buildings are being utilized. One question that was asked was the type of rentals. Were they birthday parties? Were they corporate events? Unfortunately, we don't collect that sort of data. When somebody comes in to rent the building, it's just put under their name. So even whether it's a birthday party or whether it's Westar wanting to do a training, or APAC does some training there, so we just put it under their name. So that's something we're going to address internally so we can start really finding out what types of events and who are renting the buildings. But unfortunately, that's something we cannot report on at this point. The other thing that I did, or I failed to put in the memo as well as the PowerPoint presentation, was there's some questions about that original survey that was done back in 2011 about the master plan and how some of these amenities ranked. So in that survey, there were 23 options that the survey respondents could mark. They marked their top 3 of those 23 options. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'll go through the top several. The number 1 choice was trails. The second choice was playgrounds. Third was small shelter. Fourth, which is kind of an oddball one, is boat rentals. Fifth was a large shelter. Sixth was outdoor fitness. And seventh was a reception hall. So again, there are 23 total, so they go all the way down through a petting zoo and skate park and BMX track. So the building we're really looking at was really number 5 or number 7, kind of however you classify that, on that list of 23 items. So I think that those numbers compared with our usage numbers really does show there's a demand for these type of spaces. I'd also like to point out the conversation we had about competition. In this time where we're seeing a lot of growth in our rentals, those other buildings have come online and they're renting the buildings, yet we're still seeing growth in ours. So I think there's just a tremendous demand for these sort of spaces. So, the other thing I talked about in August was we'd already had some ideas to modify the design to try to get the cost down a little bit. So Landmark has been working really hard to come up with some ideas, and I want to show you just some of the preliminary ideas we have. So the top image is the original design, and the bottom image is the revised design. So the main feature we're seeing here is we've lowered the roof line. So we've had this kind of second story here that we've now removed. We've also eliminated some of this is a stone post for the fence that surrounds some of the HVAC equipment. So we've lowered the roof line significantly. So that's the front of the building as you would walk into the building. This is the back of the building. And again, you can see how the roof line has changed. We've lowered the height of the roof down significantly. You also see it's hard to tell the difference between what this is and what this is. We've gone to a brick veneer as opposed to a limestone veneer. I really like the limestone, so we may add that as an add alternate, but the brick will be a much more cost-effective way to surface the building. So then just a side view of the building. Again, the top image is the original. The bottom image is the revised. So you can see again how we've reduced all these upper windows, lowered the building down. We've eliminated this overhang here. So there's some post and some veneer that limestone veneer that we've eliminated as well. So
looks like you did something to the sidewall, some posts or something there.
Oh, here, yes.
There.
If I go, the next image will show that. Yeah. So then if you take a section of the building, so what you're seeing are these posts here on this overhang. So this is the original kind of a section of the building.
Okay.
So we've eliminated that overhang there, and then all these posts in conjunction with it. So now we have a much more simpler building section. We wanted to kind of stay true to the theme, so we still kept the exposed wood elements, as well as this kind of feature wall. So this will be the back of the building. There'll be a drop-down projection screen. Can drop down, or for other events, this can be the focal point of the room. So that didn't really change. Again, we went from brick or from limestone veneer to a brick look, but still tried to keep the feel of the building as close as the original idea as we could. We also changed some of the site work. The image on the left is the new design, so you can see we've really limited the amount of patio space where before we had this much larger patio space. So those are just some of the initial ideas. I just threw this one in here just to show that really the interior of the building hasn't changed much, so the footprint hasn't changed. We are looking at possibly removing one section of the building. So this is the main hall here, possibly reducing that by 8 feet. So each one of these lines then is approximately an 8-foot section of the building. So by shortening the building by 8 feet would be an additional idea. But generally we haven't changed the footprint of the building. It's more some of those
What's that number again? Footprint square footage?
4,300 square feet.
43, so it's
Yeah,
about
it's
double what
large-
the home builders
Correct.
size
Yeah.
would be, about 4,300?
Yep, the main hall is about 1,600 square feet. So the main hall is pretty large.
And a follow-up then to that, then so what's the hall area of, say, builders? You said
So that building's
was
2,100 square feet. So that's probably 1,000 or less.
About 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
It is my recommendation to proceed with these building modifications and then rebid a project in January, hoping for a better bidding climate. I mean, we've run into that recently with multiple projects. And we're hopeful that January is a good time to bid because contractors are looking for their next year projects. The other thing I wanted to point out that I included in my memo is I would encourage you to look at this building really as an investment in our community. This building should be here for 50 plus years. I mean, hopefully I'll be retired by then on my retirement building. But in that time frame, this building could host thousands and thousands of community events, whether they're birthday parties or baby showers or whatever it is, class reunions could happen to this building. So it's an exciting project. I think this is something that if we're allowed to proceed and if we're able to build this building, that really will be kind of a staple of Hutchinson Parks Department. I think we've got, in one of my earlier memos, I talked about, the impact that Carrier Park Golf has and that the zoo has and our Jim Martinez Trail. Some of those things that really stand out in our Parks Department, and I really think this building will be on that list of things that people really think about when you think about parks here in Hutch. So, again, it is my recommendation to proceed with these building modifications and try again at the bidding. There's really nothing to lose at this point. Landmark's committed to doing these revisions with no additional charge. And then if we do rebid it in January, those results will be brought back to City Council for approval at that point. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Do we have an idea with the revisions? Does that bring us back to the original budgeted amount or under? Or?
That's the goal, is to get down to the original or under.
Okay, so those revisions we hope will get us to where we were.
Correct. Because we don't know for sure what's going to happen today and what the outcome of this. Landmark has not invested a ton of time into it. I asked them we need to show something, that we can modify this building to get it back where it needs to be. So that is the goal, is to get it within after all the fees and geotechnical work and everything. Really, our target for construction costs is $800,000.
$800,000 construction dollars.
Costs, yeah, because we have engineering fees came out of that, or design fees, as well as geotechnical and some special inspections will have to come out of that as well.
Justin, several people have reached out to us about this, both for and in opposition to this building. But one of the things that keeps being brought up that I think is a good point is, would this add a lot of maintenance costs to our Parks Department budget?
I don't know about a lot, but yes, it will add. One thing that we're looking at doing is, right now, and I'll get to your point, so just bear with me. With home builders in Rice Park, you can kind of rent them whenever you want. And so we go in and clean them in between. We put an hour in between rentals. And so then we're always trying to kind of meet their schedule. So we're looking at doing a more systematic approach where we have like a morning block and an afternoon block, so we can kind of prioritize when we're in the buildings, when that maintenance occurs, just on a daily routine maintenance. So just making sure toilet paper is stocked and those sorts of things, the building is clean. And so for this building, because of the size of it, it would be a full day rental. So you have it all day, and then we would have time the following morning to get in there and do the routine stuff. From a building standpoint, because the building's relatively simple, it's relatively simple HVAC system. It's nothing electronically controlled, anything like that, like we did at the sports arena. This building won't be a tremendous nightmare when it comes to maintenance. I mean, vandalism's a whole nother issue, but just everyday maintenance, I don't see this building being that challenging. We do have standards for cleaning, so whoever the renter is, they have standards they have to meet to clean. So the expectation is we don't do a lot of cleaning. Now we do sometimes, but generally we don't with our existing.
Okay. Well, I will say that I see two significant differences between this and what's offered in the private sector, and that is the price point is much lower to rent. When you change the structure, so you're renting for a whole day, is that going to change that? Are we still going to be able to make this space available to people at a much lower cost than what's normally available?
That's our goal, is to bring it down, so it's still reasonable. You know, I don't have a price structure for this building yet.
Absolutely.
And we will go out and do some research, you know, because there's other communities that have buildings. South Hutch has a community building. Haven has a community building. So we'll look at the market around us as well as the private sector and try to make it so that we're still reasonable, so those folks who maybe can't afford a private venue still have an option to have a nice event.
Yeah, and then the other item is that it's located where a playground is. So I've been contacted by a lot of event center owners who are concerned about this, and I see it as pretty different from their offerings because it's not surrounded by playground equipment. And so people who are searching that out aren't necessarily going to rent their facility.
Correct.
And then I mean, full disclosure, I am employed by a company that has an event center, and I will say that the owners of that event center do not see this at all as a competition to our business in any regard, and there's a huge price difference between what we would rent our building for and what a park building would rent for. So,
well, you do the quick math on the home builders, and we rent it for under $100 an event, which is certainly very, very affordable.
We're currently at $7 an hour, 5-hour minimum.
I'm sorry, 5 hour?
5-hour minimum, and then a $50 deposit.
And a $50 deposit.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are looking to bump those up a little bit
Yeah.
for 2019, maybe like $10 an hour. It's still very, very affordable.
Very affordable.
So.
I agree with Jade in terms of having rates that are reasonable. I think we're well below reasonable.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, maybe we're not recouping enough of our costs and still being reasonable with just what it takes to operate that building and maintain it and clean up afterwards and that kind of thing. Maybe we've all been contacted, but my sense is that we, with our public buildings, and this one in particular, along with Rice Park and Hobart Debtor, not Hobart Debtor, excuse me, Home Builders, we provide an opportunity for folks who may not just want, but an availability of buildings that can be afforded. And also, and you mentioned the playground, a downtown space with sidewalk, street, and asphalt parking doesn't lend itself to birthday parties and family reunions and graduations, which tend to involve less formality and basically gives you an opportunity to kick the kids outside and let them play in the dirt and on the playground rather than kicking them outside and telling them to play in the traffic. So.
It's a totally different clientele.
Yeah, it is.
In my books. So.
I agree, and Steve, you had mentioned that we rent them for a pittance, but one thing to remember is that all the taxpayers have already paid for them, and they're paying for their maintenance daily, you know, with their taxes. So we can't always look at something as how are we going to make this break even. But I will say, that being said, this is one project I've really struggled with because the conversations about it came on the heels of a grueling budget process. And so I'm always concerned about adding things that are going to have additional maintenance costs or add to our general budget. But overall, I just can't get past the point that it's so much different than what's offered in the private sector. And having spoken with several event centers and looked at their pricing structure and looked at their location, and I really feel like it's different.
The other two parks also offer those, Rice, Cary. It would be remiss if we didn't have that at another crown jewel park, some sort of offering of rental space or whatever. It appears that the various changes that were made will get us back to the original budgeted item, which is what we agreed to originally at the start of the conversation. So with that being said, I would be open to that conversation. I think something
Yeah.
belongs out there. We need, and going back, you answered my question, which was during the questionnaire session, how many people wanted it, and you'd mentioned that it fell fifth or something like that, but you also said something to the effect of a large shelter was third or something like that.
Small shelter
Small
was
shelter was-
third, large shelter was fifth, and then a reception hall was seventh.
And depending on your definition of any of those three items, they could all be the same darn
Yeah.
thing. So it was mentioned 3 times in the top 10.
Yeah. And the respondents were given the option to select 3 of 23 options.
Right.
So those
right.
3
So-
showed up. Yeah.
Yeah, showed up a lot. Yeah.
Yep.
So as we discussed this morning, we go back to when we issued the bonds a year ago, Angela, and you were kind enough to do some research, and I really, really appreciate that, and that did clarify that question I had on that extraordinary revisionary provision. So we have issued $800,000 in bonds, and your recommendation is to rebid this, and I certainly support that. But without tying your hands, Justin, I would certainly be one that would lean toward being able to support something not to exceed the original bond issue of $800,000. I may have some trouble if we exceed that in terms of the rebidding of it. So that threshold of the $800,000, personally, I'm comfortable with that, and I think it needs to be rebid, and I think the project needs to be moved forward. But to go beyond that, I would be, I'd have some trouble with that one.
Yeah, I'm with you, John. I'm not willing to
Exceed that.
to vote for anything that goes above that.
Goes above that, yeah. So if that, without tying your hands, I hate to do that, but I understand that these are kind of the parameters we're working under with the original issuance of the bonds. And thank you for doing that work. That does clarify that for this one and others too. So.
Related to that and the work you did, Angela, it sounds like I'll use the word flexibility. We have some flexibility if we felt that we needed to change our minds or go a different direction. May not be simple or any number of other things, but we do have that flexibility, which is good to know.
Okay.
Okay, so
Justin,
basically,
anything else?
we're saying proceed with the.
We have nothing to make a motion on. You simply needed some direction.
Just some
Yeah.
direction.
To
yes,
go
just
through
'cause
bid,
There's no cost to rebidding this. I just, after our conversation 2 months ago, wanted some more direction on how to proceed. So
That give you enough?
I think this conversation is plenty for me.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Very
thank
good.
you. Thank you.
Give
for
the contractors the direction to sharpen their pencils.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Really
contractors.
sharpen their pencils.
Okay, next item.
Item 9, report of city officials.
Jade?
I just wanted to thank the fire department for sending out a truck and some men out to the Hutchinson Regional Medical Center birthday party. That was a lot of fun for all the kids there. They played all the lights and let the kids crawl all over it. So the fire engine. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I think they're gone, but I'll put that out in the ether. That's all I had.
David?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to invite everybody to join me Tuesday, October 23rd, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Fox Theater. There's an event that's going to be held by a group called Strong Towns. Their president, Chuck Marone, will present the Curbside Chat. And it's described as a frank discussion about where we are as a community and where we might better focus our energy to achieve a collective vision of our future. It is free. It is open to the public. I did have the pleasure of attending one in Tulsa about a year ago. It was a very interesting, eye-opening conversation about various different things, from infrastructure to other things, bike trails, this, that, the other, walkability. A lot of different things came into play. I think it'll be a good conversation, and for those that are wanting to air their opinions, this might be an opportunity to do so and get some answers from some people who know what they're talking about, kind of a thing. Second, to show that nobody is above the fray, I received a letter from the city of Hutchinson that a back portion of my lawn had gotten too long. And it had. To be fair, it was underwater, and I'm sure we all have our excuses. But I couldn't get the mower back there to mow it, and somebody recognized that. I got the letter. It has been addressed.
That's funny.
Is Trent still here? No.
Yeah, I was gonna say. But it is right. They were accurate. Whoever or however it was just put out there, and it's been addressed. So that's all I had to say.
Pretty good confession.
Yeah.
It is.
Really?
I did. My wife said, "Are you going to tell him?" I said, "Of course I'm going to tell him. It happened. We got it corrected."
Good for you.
Well, there it is.
And it's good to prove that the city doesn't discriminate.
Oh, there's no discrimination. I got my letter.
I'll run by
certified.
there. I'll run by there today and see if it's been.
You better
do
check.
it. You'll do the inspecting?
I didn't realize you got that. But, yeah.
That's all good.
I want to spend a minute to talk a little bit about something that's evolving across the state of Kansas called the Legislative Transportation Vision Task Force. That's a lot of words there, but what's transpiring is that you may recall earlier this year the legislature created this transportation task force to basically evaluate the current transportation program in Kansas, which has come to a stall. And this Thursday in Newton, Kansas, at the Meridian Center, we will have quite a delegation from Hutchinson, Reno County, Rice County, and Barton County appearing before this transportation task force of 31 people. I'm fortunate to be on that task force as a representative of the Kansas League of Cities. We've had 4 meetings thus far across the state in Salina, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and now Newton, and then we'll go to Garden City, Wichita, Hayes, Olathe, Manhattan, and Topeka. Anyway, what this is essentially all about is to begin to identify the needs in Kansas as it relates to transportation, and to present those to the legislature in January in anticipation that the legislature will hopefully get their arms around a sustainable funding program for transportation. We in Hutchinson, Reno County have enjoyed over the last 3 programs an enormous amount of improved transportation. We have been really blessed with the improvements in overall highway transportation. Mr. Deerdoff, I read his testimony yesterday, the mayor's testimony that will be part of the delegation. And what this is all about, these folks are going to be speaking to what we call the Northwest Passage. That's the corridor, the diagonal corridor north and west of Hutchinson, with a diagonal up north of Sterling, and then ultimately to Great Bend, and ultimately to I-70. It's been a project on the forefront for 30 years, and gradually, little by little by little, we're picking away at it. So I want to just alert you all to that there will be a nice delegation in Newton this Thursday representing the region, and it's truly a regional effort. We've got nice testimony from the hospital and from the community college, and the Chamber of Commerce will all be testifying Thursday at this section. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
And John, thank you
Yes.
for your willingness and certainly a significant amount of time and the effort, of course. So thank you for your being part of that and representing.
Sure.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Nancy?
Not much, really. I noticed this morning coming down Main that the city is getting ready, excuse me, for the Rod Run this weekend. The flowers look good, the barricades are getting out, and, so encourage everybody to go down. I'm afraid it may be a little damp, but let's hope that it doesn't rain out the event.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's in
Yeah.
the midst of the
Maybe
rain
a
that's
little,
in the forecast.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a further update to all of you. I had a nice visit with Mayor Blumenthal of South Hutch. I think it was about 2 weeks ago tomorrow, if I recall, just right after our last meeting. We discussed a number of things. No decisions made, obviously, but she's certainly open. That was a pleasant discussion. She had expressed before we met an interest in, there were a couple more of their council members interested in joining in on the conversation. I declined that at that time, just because I wanted to have that opening meeting between her and I. But she reiterated that, and so I've asked Vice Mayor Inskeep to join me. We're hoping maybe next week to get together with And they've got a little different setup. Their mayor is not a voting member. So their open meetings, coma, that they've been advised and re-advised that as long as the mayor is one of the party, they can have 3 people present. So they'll have 2 of their voting members and their mayor. And they are a 6-member council. So anyway, so we're meeting with we're hoping to meet with them here in the near future, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
John?
Yes, Mayor, a couple things. Didn't get my weekly reader out this week, so I'm going to save a couple for today. But the RFP on the hotels convention center project, we really got one formal proposal submitted. That was from the current owner of the atrium. We had really 3 letters / emails of interest from other groups that would like to talk more about the project. Obviously, site control is an issue for a lot of them, and so weren't very specific on that. And so we're going to set up a meeting with our working group, hopefully later this week or or next week. And that's the mayor and Councilman Dave Line, along with the chamber task force, to kind of evaluate where we're at and decide, where we want to go. Don't really want to talk about all the specifics, but the current atrium proposal does include the construction of a new franchised hotel to the front, as well as some demolition of some rooms. And so, pretty good proposal in terms of what we're looking for. And as we said from the get-go, obviously the current owner has, 20,000 of fairly new convention space already built that other projects don't have. And a lot of it's going to come down to how much incentive, how much investment the city council is going to want to make in a project. On the atrium, probably not going to be asked as much as we will on some of the other projects. So anyway, if you have any questions on that, just wanted to kind of give you an overview. We're still moving forward on that. I think we got exactly what we expected with the RFP, that we would get one proposal, but we would also bring some other people out of the woodwork to talk about other possibilities. So the mayor and I will be attending the League of Kansas Municipalities Conference in Topeka this weekend. We've been notified that President Trump will be having a rally at that same facility on that Saturday, which really complicates things. And so we all have to have like certain credentials to park in the parking lot. I don't know what's all going on, but that'll be an interesting display up there.
Where's it being hosted again?
At the
Capitol Plaza.
Capitol Plaza. Yeah. I mean, we're utilizing that day. We're not. Yeah. Our event isn't actually in the convention center space, the big area, but his deal will be happening. There'll be a lot of black Suburbans around, I'm sure. And then just an update, Chief Hooper has notified me his official start date was October 22nd, and he's now requested that be moved up to October 17th. His last day in Manhattan or Riley County is October 16th, and he is ready to go to work. Wow. And so he wants to come, and they've already secured housing here. And
great, that's incredible.
Our interim chief, Alan, was a little disappointed because it's going to take him.
Boy, we're just booting you out the door pretty fast, huh?
But we'll keep him hanging around for a few more days. But Chief Alan's been just great. Steckline, the Chief Steckline in the interim, and just kind of going to be able to share some of his observations with the new chief and help him, get up and running fairly quickly. So excited about that.
October 16th is National Bosses Day, so maybe you'll get a cake. Last day.
Give that guy next to you an elbow in the ribs, remind him.
Oh, funny.
And I believe that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Hyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckett?
Yes.